going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome to another edition of Dangle Bet Sally, powered by FTN right here on Game Plus Network, presented by PointsBet Canada. Chris Meaney and Eric Young here with you. We're going to be talking, of course, about Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals, a 4-3 victory in overtime, courtesy of Andrei Burakovsky, who's had a rough go in the playoffs and quickly all forgotten about as his Avs are up 1-0. We also have Greg Wyshynski of ESPN stopping by in a few minutes. He was at the game last night, so we're looking forward to chopping it up with him, get his thoughts on Game 1. He thinks Tampa Bay can rebound, and we'll take a little bit of a look forward in Game 2 and have some fun with Greg. EY, what's going on, man? Happy Thursday. What you think about last night? What'd you think?
Yeah, you could go ahead and inject that right directly into my veins.
Oh, yes, sir.
7 of those, 14, I hope. I mean, it was everything, right? Like speed, skill, physicality, nothing stupid except for maybe the one tripping call. Maybe it wasn't a tripping call, but whatever.
Was that a call? Tell me that was such a soft call, man. I get it. If they don't call it, Cirelli's probably on a breakaway. But my goodness, it's Cale Makar. This guy's the best skater we've ever seen. He's gliding around blue lines like with his eyes closed on one edge. But yeah,
not the best
I thought
call.
It was a weak call.
It's going to happen. Whatever. It happens to all teams, all fan bases, all players. There's no advantage. They're not against. They're not against Tampa. But I get, if you're a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, how that can be infuriating. So, but like I said, man, that's everything that hockey's supposed to be, right? Like I think a lot of the discussion about this series has been about that. It has been about that for me. Is these are two juggernauts in the NHL. There's not some Cinderella story, not some team that's relying on just a goalie or someone that some player that got crazy hot like DiPietro for the Montreal Canadiens. A little jab at you, Chris. I still remember. I hate that guy. Was never a good player, and all of a sudden turned into the greatest hockey player on earth for that entire run for the Montreal Canadiens. But anyways, that game was great. I'm hoping for more of those. I don't see why there won't be more of those. Colorado looked really fast. Tampa was struggling to keep up. That's how it appeared to me. I think defensively, Tampa is a really good team. They're blocking shots like crazy, and that's what it's going to take, and that's what they're willing to do because they're the Tampa Bay Lightning. But yeah, it was two different styles, superstars on both sides. Man, what a game, man! What a game.
Yeah, it really was a fantastic game. I thought Tampa did okay. I mean, honestly, it's Game 1 in Colorado. We've talked at length about how much hockey they've played. We know about the Avs. Like, nobody generates more shot attempts, more shots at 5-5. They have so much speed. They generate everything from the back end, right? The one question I think we both had heading in is the goaltending, and Kemper just, he looked okay. He didn't see a lot of rubber early on. I thought he let in a bit of a softie there in the Sergachev goal, but one he'd probably would like to have back, but they didn't weather the storm like Cooper said heading in. He was worried about the first 10 minutes of the hockey game last night, and Colorado had 2 goals in the first 10 minutes. Nichushkin had a goal. Your boy, he hit the crossbar at another one. He had a beautiful assist. Yeah, we'll get into him a whole lot more here a little bit later on, but he checked a lot of boxes. In fact, actually, George, if you want to just bring it up, we can. If we have the Avs stat here, just to kind of give you a little bit of feel of where the shot attempts came from. So this is courtesy of Natural Stat Trick, and this is 5-on-5. Nichushkin led all players in the game last night, including Tampa Bay players, in shots with 6, shot attempts 11, 6 high danger chances. He also had 5 scoring chances in there as well. Nathan McKinnon, you see, had 13 shot attempts. So, excuse me, this is all strengths. My bad. This is all strengths. But Nichushkin at 5-on-5, courtesy of Natural Stat Trick, did lead Colorado in all the metrics. The shots with 6, the 11 shot attempts. He had 6 scoring chances, and he had 2 high danger chances in there as well. So, looking at all the strengths, including power play, you got McKinnon in there with 13 shot attempts and 7 high danger chances. Overall, from a 5-on-5 standpoint, McKinnon still had put a lot of pucks towards the net. 6 shot attempts. He only had 2 shots. But Nichushkin was great. I thought he looked absolutely fantastic last night. You mentioned he could have had a hat trick. He ripped one off the crossbar early, and he had the goal. And like I said, he had the setup in there. So he was really, really strong last night. So Colorado, they came out flying up early 2-0. Everyone's talking, oh, Avs are, and we know this, the Avs are awesome. And I think a lot of just like loose hockey fans are like, holy crap, Colorado is actually really, really good at the game of hockey. They're just going to blow out the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions. And then before you know it, in the second period, Tampa gets 2 goals in less than a minute, and they kind of put Colorado and the fan base a little bit to sleep. Like, they were kind of quiet in the arena. I feel like there was some tension. I don't want to say nothing happened in the third period. We didn't see any goals, and then it ended quickly. But I see some people hanging out in the chat. Adam, is it Saturday yet? Rank Camp as well in here. Morning, boys. Like, what a game. Like, last night was absolutely... We've waited for it for 3 years, Eric. And we finally got a taste of it, and I hope we get 6 more games of it. Yeah,
like you said, like I think I've picked Colorado to play for the Stanley Cup for the last 3 years and was finally right this year. Tampa obviously has been a juggernaut, winning 2 straight cups. I mean, there's amazing stories on both sides. Tampa winning 3 straight would solidify them as one of, if not the best salary cap dynasty ever. I know Pittsburgh has 3 cups in the course of 10 or 15 years, but 3 in a row, one of them in a bubble, one of them in a weird COVID season. Like, it's unbelievable what they're doing. It's absolutely unbelievable. And I think it's blasphemy that John Cooper isn't even like close to winning Coach of the Year. And the GM there, I can't think, I'm blanking on his name right now. Brisebois is like, he should definitely win GM of the Year. Like, you lose your entire third line, maybe the most important line on your team, then you just replace him with these other superstar players. Paul played the most time out of any Tampa Bay Lightning. Who would have thought that? If you would have said that in February, said, Nick Paul, that's right. Nick Paul is going to get traded to the Tampa Bay Lightnings, the Stanley Cup winning Tampa Bay Lightning that has Kucherov, that has Stamkos, that has Hedman, that has Point, that has Palat, that has Killorn. Yep, Nick Paul's going to have the most ice time out of any player. It's madness.
It is madness.
And it's amazing.
And it is. And we've talked a lot about that with Nick Paul. You know, Braden Point returned last night. I do want to get into some ice time. Maybe we can save it for Greg. And, you know, certainly line matching, you know, we're starting to get a little bit of a feel. You know, of course, we just kind of went in guessing. Like, these 2 teams played in the regular season. The first game was in October. It was like the first week or so. So like,
not even the same teams, right?
A lot has happened since then. Yeah. And both teams actually struggled to start the season. Colorado actually struggled to start the season, and then they kind of found their footing and away they went. But yeah, Nick Paul, again, from Natural Stat Trick, 5-on-5 ice time was led by Anthony Cirelli. And of course, Anthony Cirelli has been like the shutdown guy. I noticed Cooper wanted to get him out there anytime he could when Nathan McKinnon was out there. And Cirelli's been really good, right? He was great against Florida, the Panthers. He kind of shut down Barkov and Huberdeau. You know, he did a pretty decent job of shutting down Matthews and Marner as well. And then the Rangers really didn't generate a whole lot at 5-on-5 offensively. And I thought they did an okay job against Nathan McKinnon yesterday. It was like a couple power plays that got them in, penalties that got them in trouble. But the Avs were quick, and I'm seeing it in the chat, right? Adam checks in. The Avs forecheck really bothered Hedman last night. It did. It bothered a lot of them. I thought the puck management for Tampa in the first period was pretty weak, right? A couple turnovers led to goals and it led to some, you know, significant scoring chances as well. And that's what Colorado can do. They can come at you in waves. They're really quick. We've talked a lot about some of their players. Arturi Lehkonen gets in on that forecheck, a good stick, and all of a sudden the puck is turned over and the Avs are, you know, humming around. Like, there's a couple shifts where the fans they're standing up and they're going nuts. They're cheering, and it's just like Cale Makar and Devon Taves playing catch and skating around in circles. So we'll dive into all that in a little bit. We will talk about Braden Point and his ice time and his return last night, his first game since Game 7 of the opening round against the Maple Leafs. But I'm super jacked about this. I really couldn't even sleep last night. I was so excited about having Greg Wyshynski of ESPN join us here on the show. And he is hanging by. I do believe he is in George. So if we can bring him in, He says, Greg is here, and look at this. Greg Wyshynski of ESPN. Thank you, sir, for taking the time to join us. I know last night you were in Colorado. Ball Arena looked absolutely electric. So, quick turnaround for you to join us here today on the show. Thanks for taking the time, and how are you, man?
Well, I've got my hotel room coffee.
Yes.
I don't know
Cheers.
exactly. EY knows, man. Like, you kind of like put your life in your own hands because you're pretty sure these machines have never been cleaned. Like, who is cleaning these machines? Like, they barely have time to make the beds. When are
extra
they cleaning
flavor?
The machines?
That's what I tell myself.
Exactly. So it's always good. And the other thing too is like being in a hotel on the road. When I was covering the previous rounds, when the Rangers were playing, I live in Brooklyn. So I was going home to sleep in my own bed, which of course has its own benefits, except when you wake up in the morning, you're completely out of sorts because like here, it's like, okay, I wake up, I go get my hotel coffee from this dumb machine, I shower, I get dressed, I go to the rink. Like that's the thing. You wake up at home, it's like now you're walking a dog. Now you're going to get the socks out of the dryer. And it becomes a whole thing to throw you off your routine. So I value the stale Hyatt coffee and the untoasted croissant I'll probably pick up on the way to the rink and go from there.
No Red Bull in that coffee this morning, Greg, or did you have enough last night?
Oh my God. Did you see that photo? So one of the things I've discovered about the Avalanche, and I've only covered games here infrequently in the last couple of years, obviously with the pandemic and everything, is I think they're trying to kill the media. So they're like most places have snacks like popcorn or whatever. They've got legit 2 different kinds of sleeves of donuts. They've got glazed and chocolate. They've got things of Oreos. They got Milano cookies. They've got Hershey's miniatures, Starburst. It's like friggin' Willy Wonka's the GM of the team. And then on top of that, I got my classic 12-ounce reduced sugar Red Bull to keep me going last night. So it's I'm ready to roll, boys. Let's go.
That is not Dallas Aikens approved. He's
it's not. It's really not.
Where would you rather be though? Ball Arena with all those like the sugar donuts, or Montreal with those hot dogs? They try to kill you at the Bell Center as well.
I think we're detecting a trend here, Chris, which is that these teams are trying to kill the media. I think it's pretty obvious. But no, it's actually a really cool place to watch a game. And I heard from all the people that had been covering the Avalanche during the playoffs that the atmosphere was really great. And it was. And to their credit, they kept the energy up even when the Lightning, crept back into the game. It was a pretty hype building. Like you could tell that's a crowd that knows that they are witnessing something pretty special with this team.
Yeah, absolutely. They are for sure. And it's something that we've talked a lot about on the show, Greg, is like, it's kind of like 3 years in the making. We've wanted to see these two teams in the Stanley Cup Finals. And I don't know if you know off the top of your head, we were trying to think about it. The last time we've seen two favorites in the Stanley Cup Finals, I mean, I think about maybe Pittsburgh and Detroit back when they went back to back, but that just seemed like such a long time ago. And last night, I think, was just fantastic. Like, give me 6 more games of last night. What were some of your takeaways from game 1?
To answer your question, I talked to some of the other writers about that the other night, and the only one we could come up with was maybe Chicago-Boston. That series seemed like it was like two favorites going, because you had two teams that had recently won cups, and obviously Boston, I think, was a little bit different at that point because it was Rask instead of Timmy Thomas, but that might have been the last one where it felt like they were on equal footing. Last night was awesome. Last night was really, really cool. It was one of those deals where like everything felt really, really like at the height of and the apex of like the playoffs. I've been kind of like talking about the Avalanche in the context of like they're the final boss for the Lightning and vis-a-vis the Lightning to the Avalanche, and it kind of felt that way. What I took away from that game though was that one, the speed advantage that the Avalanche have and we all thought they would have is legit. Like, this is a really, really fast team. They play with pace. It's possible the Lightning figure out how to mitigate that. I think the Lightning in the last 3 years have shown that they're one of the best teams I've ever seen as far as like adjustments and compensating for what the opponent does well. But they play with such great pace, and it starts with McKinnon. Makar does the same thing. All those guys just skate really well and are able to handle the puck at full velocity in ways that other teams can't. The other thing, though, about last night, if you're looking for like Lightning proof of concept, they definitely were able to get some chances in a high danger area against that Colorado defense at times. It wasn't all the time, but it was at times. And the other part of it too was that I think we all know that they've got a big advantage in goal, right? Like clearly Vasilevsky is better than Darcy Kemper, right? But that airmail goal that Kemper gave up to Sergachev last night was, that's one of those ones that in the back of your mind, if you're a Colorado fan, you're like, wait a second here. What is that? And so I came into the series thinking to myself, there's going to be a moment when the Lightning all look at each other and say, like, wow, we're not playing Igor Shesterkin anymore. And that was probably that moment last night, and I think probably put some wind in their sails.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some of the statistics. I mean, you mentioned the high danger chances. So, George, if you want to bring up the board, it's courtesy of Natural Stat Trick. Just 5-on-5 numbers here. Take a look at the shot attempts. And no surprise, right, Greg? I mean, you mentioned it, the speed that the Avs have and what they can do, offensively and generate a lot of it from the back end. I mean, 62 shot attempts to 48 against, 32 shots to 18 against, the scoring chances. But look at the high danger chances, as you alluded to, quite different. Tampa obviously dominated the Rangers in the last 4 games at 5-5 with a lot of high danger chances. You see the expected goals there as well. You mentioned some of the adjustments, and that's what EY and I were talking about as well. If you do like this Tampa team, maybe a little shorthanded game 1, in Colorado with the atmosphere and some of the offensive firepower that they have in all the days. I mean, clearly the rest didn't seem to bother Colorado at all in that opening period. They were flying out there. What are some of the adjustments that Tampa Bay can make? Is it just like I noticed last night they're a team that certainly likes to step up on the blue line and try to, if they can get Colorado to dump pucks in. I know that's not what they do, but if they can get them to dump pucks in a little bit without kind of generating all that speed, they do a great job of getting in shooting lanes and passing lanes. But what kind of adjustments do you think? Like, what do you think Cooper is saying in the team? Like, all the cliches. We've been here before. We've been down 1-0 before. But what are some adjustments that you think you would expect to see, or like Cooper's telling the team for game 2?
There are some things I think they can definitely carry over. I really thought that their puck support last night was strong in the sense that when McKinnon would get in, there were a lot of times when they'd get sticks on him. They'd be able to alter shots. McKinnon only had 5 shots on goal last night. He still cleared the shot prop. So congrats to everybody who took the over.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the 9-shot performance we thought he'd have. I thought that was an interesting way to defend him. The one thing that they need to really figure out is how to get some of their zone exit passes to connect better. I thought Hedman had a really rough night for the most part last night, and a lot of it was those simple passes that he makes to generate the rush the other way. We're getting intercepted. We're getting blocked. They were having a lot of trouble sometimes just making the rudimentary pass out of their own zone. And I think that's a correctable thing, but it's definitely something systemically that they have to sort of figure out, I think, before game 2. Other than that, I mean, they got their zone time in a lot of ways once they kind of got through the first 10 minutes of that game. I do wonder from a tactical standpoint what they'll end up doing with their lineup. Braden Point, as you mentioned, came back last night. He spent the majority of the game with Ross Colton and Nick Paul, which was the plan. I think that was a way to ease him back in and not have him play super heavy minutes, even though he ended up playing like 17 minutes last night. There was a chance he was going to play with Anthony Cirelli and Alex Killorn last night if Brandon Hagel couldn't go, and Hagel was sort of under the weather. He ended up playing and playing pretty well. I wonder what they end up doing there. That checking line has been so good for them. The Cirelli, Hagel, Killorn trio shut down Zibanejad's line in the previous round. But if you have a healthy Braden Point and you need to put him with a couple of guys that he can maybe activate offensively, because Cirelli and Killorn haven't done anything offensively while playing with Hagel, I do wonder if they make a change and end up putting Point on that line for game 2.
Yeah, you know Cooper's going to make adjustments, right? Like that's his thing. Even when it was 2-0, like I'm sitting on my couch thinking, like Tampa for sure is going to come back. Which I don't think you think about that for a lot of other teams, but they remain cool. The crazy thing is like how different this team is and how different they play from the team last year and even the bubble team from the year before that. Like you were saying it earlier, it's just they find a way and they alter and they can kind of play any which way you want. I don't know if Colorado can do that. We haven't seen that. They've kind of got their thing. And I mean, it was evident last night, the speed that they play. I think that's a lot of why Hedman was having trouble. Like there always seems to be somebody on the puck. Newhook was flying. Valery Nikushin is my Russian boyfriend. I love him.
He really does. He really does.
He might be mine too. He might be mine too if the Devils end up signing him. But
there we go.
The thing. I think you're right. I think you're right about the speed maybe being that mitigating factor. And the other thing you said that's so true about the Lightning that is one of the reasons I love this team. To be honest with you, is that adaptability. Cooper's talked about the fact that in the first 2 runs, they were the ones that they were the offensive juggernaut. And they were having to face teams.
They were dictating.
Right. They were having to face teams that were trying to take that away from them. In the first cup run in the bubble, they had to fight through Columbus, exercise that demon. And then like once they got through that team, they were able to figure out how to play against other great defensive teams. Like I think I want to say Boston was one of them, and then Dallas in the final. And then last year was kind of the same thing. Like Montreal is trying to like take everything away from you from a defensive standpoint. So then it's amazing to think about how every single series this year, including this one, is the other side of the coin. They're the ones taking away the Leafs offense. They're the ones shutting down the Panthers. They're the ones taking away Zibanejad and Adam Fox and the Rangers 5-on-5 play. Like, and now they're trying to take down the best offensive team statistically we've seen since 1988. So the ability of this team to be that good in any way you want to play is something I don't even remember seeing a team that was that adaptable before.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We talk so much about learning how to lose before you learn how to win, and maybe that's not true at all. I don't know. We're seeing maybe that with the Celtics and the Warriors. We'll see what happens tonight in that game. But like I mentioned, the Penguins and the Red Wings years ago when they lost to the Red Wings, they were a young team. Then they faced them the very next year, and then that happened. And then you mentioned Tampa getting swept by Columbus, and you're right. They really struggled to beat them the following year, and they finally did, and looked like they kind of took off. Before we get into more Colorado and get your thoughts on game 2, and I got a couple fun things. Won't keep you too long, Greg. I know you got a lot going on. You got some sights to see there in Denver. But I want to go back to Tampa and Cooper because Eric was talking about, Cooper's such a good coach, and we've talked a lot about that already and some of the adjustments. And in the broadcast, Chris Cuthbert and Craig Simpson were talking about, oh, wow, like Cooper's really not afraid to roll out the fourth line here in the third period. Late. Patrick Maroon, of course, puck goes over the glass and it's a penalty, and, they kind of escape that. But I was looking at, again, some of the 5-on-5 numbers. We've talked about Nick Paul. Like, he led the Lightning in ice time last night, all strengths. It was Cirelli at 5-on-5. And then I was just looking at Kucherov, Palat, and Stamkos last night. And maybe I'm looking into this a little bit too much, Greg. It's only one game. But Kucherov played 12 minutes and 16 seconds at 5-on-5. There were 6 other Lightning forwards that logged more ice time at 5-on-5 than him, and it wasn't Stamkos because he played 11, and it wasn't Palat because he played 10. And then you look at the top line for Colorado at 5-on-5, Landeskog 18 minutes, McKinnon 18 minutes, Nichushkin 15 minutes. Like, do they need to? I don't know. Again, Cooper, they've got cups, and he knows what he's doing, but do you expect to see? You mentioned Point. Maybe Point jumps up on the top line, maybe gets a little bit more ice time, but he played more than Kucherov at 5-on-5. Would you expect to see more from that top line? Maybe a couple double shifts here moving forward?
I got one word for you, buddy. Altitude. Like, you got to remember where they're playing. You got to remember there's an adjustment for all these guys. And, the ice time figures for some of them in game 1 might not necessarily be the ice time figures for them in game 2 because there is an adjustment to be made. And it takes a few days for your body and your lungs to get ready for this altitude. They try to train through it, but you could see even in their skate pregame and the day before, like they were kind of struggling to kind of catch their breath and find their wind. And like, they'll get there, like no question, but that might've been a factor in why the ice time was what it was for some of those guys, but they're fine. I mean, again, like Kucherov is so insanely good.
Oh
I've been asked a lot about the Conn Smythe prop if the Lightning win. And there's a notion, I think, that if they beat the Avalanche, obviously Vasilevsky probably should be the MVP. Like, its logic would dictate they win the series, it's going to be on his back. I mean, he wasn't the best player on the ice in game one. I thought that was Kucherov for them and making that play to Palat. And if Kuch ends up leading them in points by a pretty significant margin, knowing the voters, and I think I might be one of them, so I don't know if I'll even allowed to say this, but
we won't clip it.
We like to. No, that's fine. You can clip it. They like to spread the wealth. I mean, in every award in the NHL, they like to spread the wealth. You rarely see back-to-back winners in any NHL award that's voted on by the media. So Vasi has his MVP. Hedman has his MVP. It wouldn't surprise me to see Kucherov get his flowers if he ends up being as influential in the series as he's been in the previous 3 rounds.
And Eric, we talked about that, right? I mean, if you want to back the Lightning at plus 160, plus 155, wherever it is that you got it, I mean, why not take one of the Lightning players at Kuch or Vasilevsky at 4-1 to win the Conn Smythe, and I'm sure you'll probably get better odds now. We got the board here for those. I mean, we had some people here, Greg, obviously, they like to get some shot props. You got the Tampa board here. I mean, we can take a little bit of this moving forward. Hedman didn't really look himself. You're right. Maybe he's dealing with something. I'm sure a lot of these players are dealing with something at this time of the year, but the speed, I thought, really got after him. He had an assist, 2 shots, 7 attempts. He had Palat there with a goal. I mean, he's got points in 13 of his last 15 games. He's been electric here after a rough regular season for him. 3 shots, 5 attempts. He had 5 scoring chances and 4 high danger chances. We mentioned Nick Paul leading the Lightning in ice time there. And then Braden Point, he had an assist. One thing that went our way in the FTM bet tracker, he had plus 185 for an apple and plus 100 for a point, but he did not have a shot attempt. He did not have a shot attempt last night. Not at all. It was plus 140 for 3 shots. And I was thinking, it's pretty risky, but, as you know, Greg, that's why there was value on Braden Point. Do you expect maybe a couple more or a couple shot attempts, I suppose, in game 2?
You would hope so. I thought that's a good bet on him in game 1 as far as like to score a point, because I thought once he got power play one time that would maybe be the entry point to him scoring in the game. Obviously the power play didn't work out all that well for Tampa. But yeah, I mean, the shot props for the Lightning are always tricky because you don't know game to game what the mode is going to be. Obviously last night was Fire Wagon. I thought it was pretty predictable that game was at least going to be the one in the series that went a little goofy, cuckoo bananas offensive. I took Tampa on the team total over 2.5 as my best bet, and
nice.
Felt pretty good about life after the game. But if they're leading in a game, it's gonna really like suck up and vacuum up all the shot attempts because they're going to end up on their heels. They're going to be playing, 1-4. They're going to try to like slow down and muck up the Avalanche attack any way they can. So it's sometimes tricky with Tampa as far as the shot props, because you can get to 2 of the guy and then you won't get to 3 because of just the style in which they have to play if they have a lead late in the game.
I feel like, Eric, we've just been talking about taking point props for Tampa Bay players, and as we bring up the board here for Colorado, is just to take shots with Colorado guys and certain assists. Nichushkin, we've just kind of touched on him, the 11 attempts, which was the most by any player last night at 5-5, 6 high danger chances. McKinnon had 13 attempts overall, 5 shots, 2 of them at 5-5. I think they did a decent job against him at 5-5 last night. Landeskog opened up the scoring for Colorado. Makar had 9 attempts. None of them hit the net, but he did play a game high 28-49, an absolute monster. And then Burakovsky there with the game-winning goal. You mentioned Nichushkin. Eric always says this on the show, and I buy into it. He's, you hear people all the time, Greg, about contract years. They're playing for a new contract, protect their families.
Oh, yeah. Singing for their supper, baby. That's what they're doing.
They really are. And you mentioned Nichushkin potentially, maybe Devils are in on him. What does his contract look like next year? And my goodness, this is a player that has just, I know you remember his days in Dallas. He couldn't even crack the lineup. Couldn't even play over 10 minutes a night, sometimes healthy scratch. Now he was an unbelievable weapon last night.
He's a beast.
So it's your theory that guys sometimes play better in their contract years. I say as I look at Nazem Kadri having 1 billion points this season, I believe, before he goes unrestricted.
Fitting.
Forsberg.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
No.
I think the Cushion probably gets. It depends on the team. I mean, like I think there's proof of concept now for him as a great 2-way winger. I think he's the kind of guy that can create a little space on your line. He's very defensively responsible. The analytics community loves him. There's definitely value there, and I think he is one of those players that they'll have trouble retaining. But that's the joy of both of these teams, the Avalanche and the Lightning. Like the exodus of talent that we've seen from both of them in the last year. Coleman, Gaudreau, Gord, Brandon Saad, Donskoy, Bellemare, who then goes to the Lightning. These are two of the best front offices in the league. They're both analytically driven. They're both data heavy in their player acquisition. And you just see it in the way that they were able to reload. And in the Avalanche's case, maybe with a few of those younger players that have filtered into the lineup, but also the trade deadline acquisitions of Lehkonen and Josh Manson. And then obviously with the Lightning and their trade deadline acquisitions, and also the signing of Perry and Bellemare in the offseason. Like, to lose a Nikushkin for a lot of teams would be like, how do we replace that? But
they'll be fine.
Like, they're gonna be fine, man. And it's like, and if you don't want to stay there and be part of what they're building or what they've already built, it's like, thanks, buddy. Thanks for the cap space. Good luck on all your future endeavors, right, EY?
Yeah,
that's the line. That's the line. Yeah, a little wrestling stuff, because I know Greg's a wrestling guy. Talking about the elevation. I mean, you always hear about it in sports, and I had never wrestled in Denver or in Colorado anywhere. And it was early on in TNA, and I was wrestling Nick Aldis, and he's young and he's paired with me because they're trying to, it was kind of my job to get the new guys that were super jacked to learn how to wrestle and be better at TV. And great guy, a good buddy of mine to this day. And we're doing a house show in Colorado, and Pueblo, Colorado. And the elevation there is even more than it is in Denver. And I'm like, we'll see, because if you look at Nick Aldis, you're like, oh, he's an athlete. He's a freak. And, well, I know better. Guys like that die, and I can grind. And we did this crisscross spot where we run back and forth a whole bunch. And it was supposed to be a whole lot more of that. And he just like slid out and was purple and just shook his head. And like, we're not doing that anymore. And the truth is it's real. Like, you can not get a full breath. And a team like Tampa playing,
blown up.
They're at sea level, right? They're not used to this. They don't play
They're very much
often
level,
in places like that where the elevation is like that. Do not kid yourself. That is going to be a massive part of the narrative. It is not easy. You saw them with oxygen mask when they were playing in Calgary a few times this year, and the elevation there is nowhere near what it is in Denver.
You see in football too all the time, right? Yeah, guys are on the sidelines. It's like after a 10-yard run with the oxygen mask, Greg.
Yep.
Yeah,
you get blown up running the ropes, man. You're in like top of the mountain. You're sucking air.
It's crazy how different it is, and from that day forward, like, I would just kind of like brush it off. But after wrestling there, I can tell you, and when you're not used to it, it is noticeable. Like, you just feel like you can't get a full breath.
Yeah.
So Greg, EY calls himself a fantasy hockey psycho. Are you a wrestling psycho? Is this how you guys connected back in the day? Am I correct?
Yeah, I think hockey and wrestling, right?
Yeah, we connected because I think through Merrick versus Wyshynski, the podcast I did with Jeff Merrick, which it was. I mean, I'm proud to say that it's like one of the best things I ever helped create. It was like the forebearer to a lot of hockey podcasts that have come down the pike, and Jeff and I are still doing a weekly hit on his show every Wednesday. So I think that's probably how you and I first connected. But then, like, obviously the wrestling thing and the hockey thing, it just became sort of a natural connection. And again, it's the best. The crossover between wrestling and hockey fans is legit. And
massive.
And there are always times when I'll drop a kayfabe reference, or I'll drop a put this team over reference, and like people will be like, enough with the wrestling. I'm like, dude, the Venn diagram of wrestling and hockey fans is a circle. If you're one of the outsiders that isn't in that circle, I feel for you, because everyone else is kind of in the same party right now.
Greg, we'll get you out of here on this. Just a couple of rapid fire fun questions. Okay, so last night, Ball Arena seemed electric. What's the best arena around the league in terms of atmosphere that you've been in?
When it's cooking, Bell Center in Montreal is unparalleled for like how hype that place gets, and it's hype, and then it's also just like the gravitas of when the Habs are good. It's pretty great. I will say, I'm not the biggest Madison Square Garden guy. I'm from Jersey. That place is like, a tomb for me. But I will say though that like you realize the power of that place when the Avalanche came skating out to Baba O'Reilly by the hoop for the third period last night, and there's like electricity. But then you think about when the Rangers come out to that song in the first period at home in like the playoffs, like they did for the last few rounds, and like there's just no comparison. Like it feels like the roof of that place is going to blow off when you're at MSG during a playoff game for the Rangers. So those two atmospheres are two of my favorite, without question. And then of course I got to put over Vegas too. Like Vegas, I don't know what it's like now that they've kind of like stumbled a little bit in the last few years, if they're getting a little jaded or whatever. But at the height of its powers, like the Vegas environment really was one of the more special home ice advantages in the league, not only in volume and in gimmicks, but like, warm ups while the showgirls are standing by the glass. Like it's just nuts.
Checks a lot of boxes. I've been there a couple times. I encourage everybody to go check out a game in Vegas. It absolutely is fantastic. So this one may be the same in terms of Montreal. I know that you have a huge following and people are just so crazy on social media. If you say anything negative about one player, you just get it from the fan base. I don't have that type of following, but I feel a little bit of it as well. Worst fan base in the NHL. Give it to us.
Woo! Well,
where do you start?
Currently, I think every fan base is a little psychotic in their own ways. Man, who's giving me the most grief? Well, Colorado's. This is a personal thing. Like the Oilers fans and the Colorado fans, for some reason, both really inherently believe I have it in for them. The Oilers probably because it's just so easy to criticize that team, and because I've been pretty outward in saying that we should send in SEAL Team 6 to rescue Connor and bring him to the States and put him on an American team for his benefit and for the benefit of the game. So I could see why they didn't like that. The Colorado fans, though, are really weird because like I called the team bland, and it was actually meant as a compliment in the sense that things come so easily to them that sometimes their games seem like drama-less. Not effortless, but drama-less. Like when you beat Nashville, like 8
they control the whole thing, right?
Yeah, they just control the whole thing, and some of their personalities, although a little intriguing in how like intense McKinnon is, and Landeskog's got a little bit of personality, but like they're not exactly the most compelling team, and there's not a lot of like inherent drama. Like their biggest storyline for the playoffs is which one of our competent goalies will start. Like snore, right? Like who cares? So they don't like me calling them bland, and they also really believe that I've been against their team since the Devils lost to them in 2001 in that Ray Bourque series. Like they really believe that like I've been biased against them since then. I'm like, buddy, I saw 3 Stanley Cup wins from my team growing up. Like there's absolutely nothing that happened in that series that I don't care. The one thing they don't understand in this business is that I can't hate your team if I don't care about your team. Like it's a very simple equation. I care about the Rangers. I care about the Flyers. I've cared about these teams my entire life. I don't care about the Oilers. I don't care about the Avalanche in that like personal vendetta way,
Jokes. Yeah, I mean, you get that across with all the fan bases. It doesn't matter what you say, Greg. You're gonna get it. Okay, so
I'll say this real quickly. You do also get it from Coyotes fans every time you bring up the fact they're going to play on a college campus for the next 3 years. They're very.
Dude, how many times have we gotten that on this show? Eric had a rant about the arena, and it was bad news.
I simply reported Bettman on his press conference yesterday mentioned like 4 other arenas that teams used temporarily when they were like expansion teams, like when the San Jose Sharks played in the Cow Palace, for a couple of years while their arena was being built. And he's like there's precedent. This has happened before. And I'm like, all of the places you just mentioned are twice the capacity of Arizona State University.
Yeah. Who are you trying to kid? Nobody. Okay. Something more fun in the way. I was checking your Instagram last night because EY tagged us. I'm like, oh, Greg's on Instagram. Nice. I'll take a look at this. A lot of great craft beers, a lot of great pictures, great scenery. I think you're into Bloody Marys. I think you like this little Bloody Mary.
I do.
Have you ever had a Caesar in Canada?
I have.
Which do you like better?
So I like a Caesar better because here's the thing with a Bloody Mary. I do not like tomatoes in many of their forms. I think they famously on Puck Soup, I've let people know that tomatoes ruin a sandwich and they don't belong on sandwiches, because if you try to take them off, then they leave their seminal goo all over your food. Yes. I don't like tomato juice. Like I don't like a V8 or anything like that. So if I'm going to drink a Bloody Mary, I need it to be very spicy. I need something to trick my brain into thinking that I'm not drinking a tomato juice based beverage. So a Caesar is inherently spicy, and I enjoy it. And when I have Bloody Marys, I need to make sure that it's spicy, or else it's just going to be a disaster for me. Also, don't put a bunch of gimmicks in the drink. Like you just need a couple olives.
Oh,
you don't make it
hot dogs and burgers on them. Oh,
it looks nonsense. Don't hand me a Bloody Mary that looks like a mobile you put over a child's crib. Like, just give me a goddamn drink.
Deconstruct it to get to the straw. No thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it pretty simple as well. I wanted to ask you about the Jets, as you're a Jersey guy, but we're running out of time here, so I just got to get your thoughts on Game 2. Who do you think wins Game 2?
I think the Lightning win Game 2. They are a classic adjustment team. I think they did a lot of things in Game 1 that they can build on. I also think that their first 10 minutes will not be a disaster as they were in Game 1. I think it'll be 1-1 going back to Tampa. I think this is one of those deals where they're going to split 2-2 and 2-2. I think the Avs win Game 5, and they probably win Game 6. I picked them in 6 as a function of I think that it's just their time, and as a function of if it goes 7, they are cooked. So like they got to win it in 6 if they're going to win the series. So I think that's how it's going to break down. But I again, like it wouldn't shock me to see the Lightning go down 0-2. I mean, it happened in the previous round. But I also think that they're going to make the adjustments they need to make. Point will be better in Game 2, and obviously Vasilevsky will be much better in Game 2.
I think so as well. Devils are a playoff team next year.
I don't want him to be. I want him to get Connor Bedard in the draft. Like that'd be pretty dope. But but I think if they're not a playoff team next year, that means they'll also have a new GM and a new coach as well. But they've got a really interesting offseason ahead of them. And the one thing I know for all the Johnny Gaudreau talk, like can we not have like a bunch of guys that are like 5'9" and under? Like get me somebody who can truck people to play with Jack Hughes. Like if you're gonna trade that pick, find a way to trade it for Matthew Tkachuk. Like don't dabble in the Johnny Gaudreau business if you can go and get yourself a power forward, because that's what they really need.
Man, how nasty would Tkachuk look alongside Hughes? That'd be fantastic. Greg, you're fantastic. We appreciate it, man. Keep up the good work. I know that you're super busy this time of this season, so we do appreciate you taking the time to jump on with Eric and I. Enjoy your time in Denver and enjoy the rest of the Stanley Cup Finals, man.
Awesome. Anytime, boys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
all right, we'll say goodbye to Greg Wyshynski right there of ESPN, and we'll wrap up here, EY, and get your thoughts on Game 2. Do you agree with Greg? Tampa makes some adjustments and they find a way to win this one?
Yeah, I'm definitely in lockstep with him, and it just has to do with the coaching and the mettle of the team. Is they're the ultimate adjustment team. If there's a team that can adjust to the speed of Colorado, and it's not because Tampa is definitely not slow, but they do not have the foot speed that Colorado does. And it's not like 3 or 4 players like we talked about it on Tuesday, like Kubel, Newhook, Darren Helm he's still in the league because he can skate, right? Like
he looked good.
I was listening to the Steve Dangle podcast, and they're like, "Oh, Darren Helm," like I didn't even know he was still playing. I mean, they live in Maple Leafs world, and I love those guys, and I'll cut them a break, but. I mean, Darren Helm looked really good last night. I think Adam Redcamp earlier said Darren Helm appreciation message, and tip of the cap to you, man, for sure.
There it is.
Yeah,
and he showed up in moments against the Oilers too, like, and even against the Blues. Yeah, I know it's just another guy on their squad that plays with a ton of speed. I'm with you. I think Tampa, rebounds here. I think there's a lot of positive that they could take away from the game last night. They went into Colorado, faced a team.
They easily could have won that game.
We talked about the altitude. Vasilevsky wasn't on his game. Slow start, gave up 2 goals, found a way to get back into the game and kind of slow the pace down to the style that they want to play in the third period. And then once you get to overtime, you guys got puck luck, a little bounce. That's what we saw, like a shot deflected. Nichushkin, Burakovsky back in the net. I mean, I think we continue to ride Nichushkin, your boy, right? For shot props. Maybe he gets at 3.5 plus money. McKinnon, Makar, even though Makar didn't have any shots, he had 9 attempts and he played nearly half the game. Like, I think that's somebody that certainly you need to have on your radar. We keep riding Palat for a point, Palat for shots, 1.5. If he gets up to 2.5 plus money, I have no problem taking that one as well. Point, I'm going to go right back to him at the score sheet. We may not get plus 185 for an assist. We may not get plus money for a point, but it's going to be pretty darn close to those odds. And then our guy Lehkonen as well, who also hit the score sheet, had a power play goal last night, up on that first power play unit. And I know Adam, I think he checked in the FTN bet tracker. I believe it was Recamp had said he got him at plus 425, plus 450 for a power play point last night, up on that top unit without Kadri. I think it's a nice little sneaky play for a 0.25 unit. Do you want to call our goal or two here on the way out? We got about a minute. There's Adam right there, Lehkonen, plus 295 power play point again. So he's going to hammer that one.
I did pretty well. I usually bet two players per game, per team. Obviously, during the regular season, there could be 15 goal scorers, which is don't do that.
Those Tuesdays and Thursdays schedules are jam packed.
Don't do that. That's not a way to build wealth. It's a way to lose wealth. But that's what I'm here for. I'm here to talk about wrestling, pretend I know about hockey, and lose money betting on goal scorers. But I did well. I put couple bucks on a Terry Lehkonen to score. That paid off pretty big. And I had Palat to score as well. Stamkos and McKinnon, I had them to score and they did not, but they both played. McKinnon played really well. He's due. Stamkos was a little invisible, to be honest. I didn't notice him a whole lot for the game. And the game is Saturday, which is awesome for me. My big main event for the world title pay-per-view is on Sunday. So I'll get to watch on Saturday, which is great. I looking at points and stuff, they don't have goal scorers up yet, but I mean, off the top of my head, I think because of the amount of generated chances, I think Makar, because he didn't score, that will be low. Like that will be really good odds for Makar. Mm-hmm. So I got a feeling on him. I would go back to Stamkos. I think he's going to have a series. I think he's going to want to show up in a big way as the captain, and is kind of like the inspirational leader of this team. I believe that Kucherov and him will play a ton more minutes. Like, look, I like Nick Paul, but I mean, if you want to win in the playoffs, you want to win hockey games, there's no way on that team he can be the person with the most ice time. I mean, I get that he plays, in a ton of different roles, but Kucherov has got to be on the ice more. He was playing great. He just needed to be out there more often. I think it probably had to do with there was quite a few penalties. It was pretty physical, so that's probably got a lot to do with it. I would definitely hammer Nichushkin. He's feeling it. And another person I would be interested in hammering on Colorado side would be Burakovsky. He's been not good in the playoffs. I think he was healthy scratched a couple times. But he was all around it last night. And sometimes when an offensive player starts to feel it like that, things just start happening for him. So
yeah, one little bounce and away you go. We wrote him up yesterday at FTN Daily as a punt play, $2,000, basically as cheap as you can go in the showdown lineup. And yeah, playing on that second line with Rantanen and Lehkonen, he's somebody that you're certainly going to take a look at. Great odds, maybe just to hit the score sheet as well. We got to get out of here. Appreciate you guys. Good luck on the ice Saturday. All the bets will be in the FTN bet tracker. Use the promo code NHL Meaney if you want to save yourself a little bit of cash. All the picks across all the sports from myself, Chris Meaney, Eric Young, Greg Wyshynski, and George running the show for us. Have a great Thursday and enjoy game 2. We'll be back on Tuesday. Cheers.